Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Joining us today is Jay Martin. He is the investor and host on the Jay Martin Show on YouTube. Welcome back, Jay.
Thanks for having me back. Looking forward to this, guys.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. So, Jay, the energy crisis in Europe keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's having an effect on the whole world. Do you believe Europe is headed for a catastrophic winter? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think, yeah, we're seeing that, right? And it's if we're expecting some trigger point event to suddenly change everything, I don't think we're going to see that. We're going to see events like we've seen, Bank of England pivot. We're now looking at, Credit Suisse as like maybe the next big disaster moment that everyone's talking about this week, right? We're just going to have to see how things play out. Like inevitably, what I think is that there's a small number of European economies that are headed probably towards complete market failure, meaning they will not be able to sustain production of anything
Wow.
due to the price of energy. It's the only input that's required for every single thing that, you brush your teeth, you drive your car, it doesn't matter. Energy was a universal input. And so, I guess what I think about when I think about that scenario, because that's a global issue we're all facing, is that we've experienced like discretionary inflation for the last couple of years and just like weird pockets, whether you're trying to buy a used car or maybe an
Right.
electronic item. I think a lot of that may abate. Some will, some won't. But the necessity inflation that's coming, I believe, is going to be pretty dramatic and pretty sustained because it's going to come in the back of the two most important inputs in human life, which are food and fuel. And that's going to hit Europe real hard. It's going to hit Europe a lot harder than it's going to hit us here in Canada and North America. So, and States, yeah.
I think you're right. Natural gas, I think a lot of people don't quite recognize just how critical that is for fertilizer production, glass making. Think of how many things require glass. They need
Right.
the heat from not just for electricity, the heat factor from burning natural gas to make these things. That smelting. There's numerous zinc smelters that have shut down. Guess what's a byproduct of zinc? Silver.
Mm.
We're seeing these things are literally just shutting down because they're too energy intensive right now. The governments of Europe are making that decision. Do we keep the factories running or do we heat our homes this winter? And they're choosing heat our homes, logically. That's the short way out of the crisis. But I think the question a lot of people have is this a short-term thing? It's just we just got to get through this winter, or is this more of a long-term crisis? I don't see a solution to this at this point in time.
Yeah, and I don't know that there is one. I think there's just going to be a transformation, right? And depending on what side of the fence you're on, it's a solution or a big problem. But I would say like, I would give Germany a lot more credit than mainstream media seems to be, and that I feel like a population can become very, very durable when aligned against a common enemy. If you like in a maybe comparable that I look at is look at the city of London during the Blitz, right? 6 months of relentless bombing, often up to 300 bombs per minute at night. The intention there wasn't to destroy London, it was to destroy the morale of England and get them to concede in the war. But the opposite happened. Nothing unites a country like war or a common enemy.
Mm.
That's an outcome, right? Like we could see
Yeah,
something like that in economies that are getting beaten down, like Germany, and given these pretty dire ultimatums, as you said, like, it could go one of two ways. The population could rise up and say, you're now asking us, like I had Ronnie Stofferly on the show, I don't know, a few months ago. And, the government in Austria is recommending the citizens start taking cold showers as a practice, right? It's interesting to see these ideas come forward. You wouldn't have expected it. So, one of two things might happen. Yeah, there could be really motivated expressions of civil unrest saying you're forcing us to make a decision we shouldn't have to make. If people are deciding whether or not they can put food on the table this week or heat their homes this week, they're going to rethink their moral stance on a war that's not even in their country, right? We just will, right? Like morality is affected by your near-term consequences. And if you're scared about the next week to a month when it comes to like food and fuel security, you'll rethink your morality on issues that are a bit further from where you're living. So that's one outcome that could come where the population says, look, we got a sort of enemy here, but what they're offering is cheap food and fuel. We have an ally over here who's offering eventual depression of inflation through mass unemployment, maybe one day. Like, it's really ambiguous, right? And I know it's massively simplified. There's way you can't just like reshuffle the geopolitical chessboard. It doesn't work like that, right? There's many, many, many variables. Yeah, I don't think this is something that ends this winter. Absolutely not. You know, I think this is something that evolves. Yeah, I mean, I think the 2020s are just going to be how the 2020s have been, right? Continued unprecedented volatility and unpredictable events. Truthfully, I feel like the most impactful are probably still to come. You know, if we reflect back on like the disruption of COVID, it was significant, but really we got locked in our homes, and you know, there's some pretty significant situations that occurred, but like, I feel like there's going to be bigger ones in our near future when you rethink, you know, trust has been broken, right? Like my whole life, we've existed in this place where like you get cheap energy from Europe, cheap goods from China, cheap money from the US. And as long as everybody trusts each other, this works, right? You can do this, right? And countries plan for the future based on an expectation that they can still trust their partners. But that trust has now been shattered. And so where the cards lie is like, it's a big mystery, I think. And you know, you're foolish to think you know how they're going to land, but they're definitely up in the air right now for sure. Because that trust, that was the backbone of the deflationary environment that I've lived through for most of my life, right? That's shifting now. That's done, right? So yeah,
a lot of we exported a lot of our inflation historically through cheap imports from China, through Europe having cheap energy from Russia. A lot of those things that we sort of just built in as constants have disappeared. And so that raises the question, is it even possible to bring inflation back down to 2% when some of those key foundations have now gone away? We can no longer export inflation to China through cheap goods. I mean, granted, we're still going to have cheap goods from China, but it seems like there's an incentive, a dramatic incentive now to onshore certain critical strategic products like chip manufacturing. We're now, you know, things like that are happening. Or in Europe, they're making that decision. All right, we don't want Russian cheap natural gas or oil. We're willing to pay 10 times more for liquefied natural gas from Qatar and Europe, and we're going to pay so much that we're going to outbid Japan and all of Asia just to get those tankers of natural gas instead of the cheap option from. And yeah, that's going to cost us our entire manufacturing base in Europe, but we're going to do it anyways. And it just seems like a crazy decision economically, but they seem like they're going to do it. They're willing to sacrifice cheap energy and the competitive advantage that gives them for all sorts of manufacturing to avoid Russian gas. And I question what happens then. Or is all manufacturing, like auto manufacturing, is BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen, are they all going to gradually start shifting to Canada, Mexico, and North America and the United States? I mean, Texas or Mexico. It seems it's a huge auto parts manufacturing hub right there. So I can see a lot of manufacturing shifting from Europe to locations where energy is cheaper. And heck, we got a lot of natural gas in Texas. So
that's the thing. Exactly. We have the ability to be competitive from a manufacturing standpoint, which is something that has not been a focus for a very long time. And reshoring takes it'll take a couple decades, right? But I kind of think about it like the way you phrased it there, Jim. It's like, this is more, not so much like a massive disruption. It's more of like a reversion to the mean, right? It's how the world's operated for most of our existence, right? We haven't had these multinational relationships and the ability to, you know, export inflation, for an example, but maybe back to a sense of realism where the goods and services we have access to or what we can manufacture and produce close to home, or, you know, and there's, like I think the conveniences and cheap goods that have just continually accumulated over my life, like maybe not so sustainable, right? And I joke, maybe I shouldn't have ripe organic mangoes in the Pacific Northwest in January, but I do. Maybe that's not a realistic expectation that we've all developed here. And, you know, things are about to shift back just to a reversion to the mean.
You know, the short-term disruptions are very painful for a lot of people, but I can't help but think that long-term, it's a healthy change to re-onshore a lot of this manufacturing, bring some of those good jobs back to North America, Canada, the United States. You know, if It requires strategy. It requires long-term planning. It requires competent leadership, which Canada and the United States seem to lack these days.
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Biden's husband.
And so one of the consequences of all this chaos in the world that we've been seeing lately is the Bank of England just recently caved and had to go back to easy money and flood and essentially rescue the pension system of the United Kingdom. We've seen gold and silver respond quite positively in the past couple of days. Do you get the sense that, I don't know, how do you interpret that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the trigger points that a lot of us are looking towards, right? It feels like the gold market is kind of coiled up right now, right? And as you know, Bank of England, yeah, they decided to save the debt at all costs, right?
Yeah.
And regardless of the implications that's going to cause. And, you know, probably the US will do that soon, I would expect, right? Last time I was on here, you're like, do you think Powell's going to complete 5 or 6? I can't remember what the question was. You're like, you think Powell will make it through 4 or 5 rate hikes? And I was like, honestly, I don't. You know, I don't think he'll have the backbone to stick it out. And he's lasting longer than a lot of us anticipated. But, you know, yeah, I'm not going to try to predict the future. Who knows, right? But you can still play that as an investor, right? Like, I don't know if and when, but, you know, I can prepare my portfolio, right, to accordingly. And like, for me, that looks like really simple right now. Like, it's a primitive portfolio that I'm running, and I love it because it gives me absolute peace of mind. It's like, it's super barbelled right now. I have nothing in the middle. I'm hyper hard asset over here, and then I'm all in. I'm not all in, but in terms of my gambling money, like I'm deep in on early stage commodity stocks right now. But like, I like exploration. I love it because there's very few like sectors of the market where if you're willing to do the work, right, and build the relationships, pay attention, you can consistently see 10 baggers realized in that industry. It's hyper risky, and way more frequently than not, that doesn't happen. The opposite happens. But, you know, if there's no asset to stand on, it's tough to see those companies recover in a broad market sell-off. Whereas, you know, if you're a producing mine, whether that's gold, silver, copper, and I'm similar, I like the sort of mid-tier producers with exploration upsides. They've got maybe 1, 2 producing assets, gold and silver. Like I like Fortuna right now, right? They're diversified geographically, 5 producing mines, a 6th coming real soon. Lots of optionality, very competent team that continually outperforms their peers. You know, and you're kind of betting on management in that regard. You're like, I don't know what the market's going to do. I can't control that, right? I don't know what sort of political unrest may be realized in these jurisdictions that you're in. But what I can bet on is this is a management team who's navigated that before, and you're betting on their competency, right? To have the right plan C in place when plan A and B get compromised, because they often do, right? And so, yeah, but like before I even get there, so yes, I'm mid-tier producers with exploration upside. I like some development companies right now. You don't really have to go to grassroots exploration right now. You don't have to, right? I don't think you need, go for it if you're into that, and there's gurus that'll point you in the right direction, but you don't have to with the valuation. So, and everything I'm putting in the market, Jim, I'm quintupled up in hard assets, like any way possible right now.
So Jay, what's that thing? I see that thing behind you over your shoulder. Is that a
bullet?
What is that?
It is a bullet. It's a 100-ounce silver shell.
Wow.
Oh my
I
God,
got this from Silver Gold Bull. And
hold on, what is that?
Wow. I didn't even know they sell that. That's awesome.
I didn't even know they sell that. That's awesome.
You know, I don't know if they make very many of them.
Is there a big premium on it, or is it pretty reasonable?
I need that. You know what? We had done a deal on the side, and we settled in unique silver items.
That's a good deal.
Okay.
Which I love. Yeah. Well, yeah. And then like I wear Monet. You know Monet? They make 24 karat gold jewelry. It's like the prices of, and so I get this for my wife and I usually for Christmas, and it's like the price of all their pieces fluctuate in real time with the gold price. So you're just paying actual bullion prices. Yeah, they put obviously their manufacturing charge on top of that. But like, I don't know, if you're going to spend some frivolous money and you're a gold bug, like where do you go with that, right?
Yeah, I love the bullet. He does have bullets also on, silver bullets as sort of a novelty item. Like 1 ounce, what was it? Was it like 1 ounce bullets or something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
I got a bunch of them. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's Silver Gold Bull, and the link's in the description for that one. But What, you were mentioning earlier that you're into sort of junior producers with exploration upside. Do you
Mhm.
have a favorite name out there that you want to share with the audience? Because I know you follow these things quite closely.
Some companies that I'm following right now, or that I'm continually, buying into. Silver X is one that I like right now, and I like Jose. I think they're a competent team. They get a lot of flack because they're in Peru, but I think you just got to look at Peru's track record, and yes, they've got a left-leaning politician right now. Well, he's the fifth politician in 6 years that country's had. What's the trajectory? What's the long-term trend
Right.
of mining sentiment in Peru? It's incredibly favorable, right? So, people get upset about the current administration. I don't sweat it. If you know your time horizon, and I know mine, and it's longer than most people's, then I'm not worried about that. I think it's competent management. They're in a neighborhood they understand really well, and they've got good relationships down there. And so, yeah.
But you do have a conference coming up in
Yeah.
January, the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, which I will be attending. Ivan, are you going to go?
Yes, I'll be there.
Yeah. All right. Jay, give us the dates on that and what people should know.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks. So it's January 29th and 30th in Vancouver, British Columbia. Canada just scrapped the ArriveCan app, so everybody can come to the country again, which is great because we had so many keynote speakers that we really wanted to get up last year, and they just couldn't make it or didn't want to go through the headache of the app and all this stuff. And I get it. So, this year we're back. Last year was a banger, super fun. Jim was awesome having you there. You packed the room a couple times for us, which was just lovely. We'll do something similar again this year.
Put me and Jeffrey Christian on stage together again?
Yes, please.
Yeah, but just you two this time, right?
No, put Rick on there too. Put Rick last year, just so if people who don't know, Jay put Rick Rule, Jeffrey Christian, and me all together on the same stage, and
went smooth.
Rick Rule got Jeffrey Christian to admit that there is manipulation of the silver markets, and
right.
And I remember Jeffrey admitted to it, and then Rick said, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Jeff, could you repeat it again?" And it was kind of hilarious, but
yeah, it was super fun, fun. So yeah, we're back with that, right? And you should come to that show if you're investing any cash in the junior mining sector. We'll have about 300 junior mining, mid-tier producers, development companies on the trade show floor. So it's like a big marketplace. And I don't know, I'm a people-driven investor. You come to these shows, you can meet the CEO, right? That's why you go, right? That's the individual who's going to have the adventure with your money. You should go and meet them. But more importantly, it's just super fun. We'll have 6 stages going, over 100 keynote speakers. Last year we had a couple world leaders, former prime minister, not present, of Canada, former president of Mexico, Felipe Calderon, Robert Kiyosaki. A list of macro personalities that you've had on your show. It's lengthy. It'll be lengthy this year. We're buffering out the agenda right now. It's looking pretty sharp. I'm very excited about it. But we try to throw the Super Bowl of commodities centric finance, right? And so if you're looking to place cash in the sector or just connect with people, it is super fun. Rick Rule, for example, if you watch podcasts and YouTube shows and you follow people like Danielle DiMartino Booth and Rick Rule and Brent Cook or whoever, they'll have a coffee with you. I guarantee if you come to the show, Brent Cook wants to go drinking with you. I guarantee it, and they're all just there to connect with people too. So, it is very much a community, a tight community, and people are super friendly and keen to help each other out because people like Rick, who's been in the game for, 45 years, he's made his pile. He's looking to pay it forward, right? I spent 2 hours in his office yesterday, just game planning some things I want to work on at this show. And he's always had all the time in the world for me or anybody who's, sort of the next generation of people in this sector. And yeah, it's lots of fun.
He's been very helpful for our YouTube channel. He comes on, whenever we ask, about every six to 8 weeks, he comes on and talks, and he's always a great, people seem to really enjoy listening to him. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again. So, Jay, thanks for joining us so much. We really appreciate it. And let's definitely do it again in the next few months.
100%. It's always super fun coming on and chatting with you guys. And I'll see you both, right? January 29th and 30th at the show. We'll get you back on stage. We'll have some more fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, link will be in the description, guys.